When former detective Ethan Graves rolled his wheelchair into Pinewood Animal Rescue, the staff warned him about Ranger, the German Shepherd who'd killed his last handler. "That dog's dangerous," they said. "He's already attacked 3 people." But Ethan ignored every warning. Everyone held their breath as his wheelchair approached the darkened kennel, bracing for the worst. Instead of lunging, instead of biting, the massive dog did something no one expected. What happened next stunned the entire shelter and became a story that melted hearts everywhere. But the truth behind it was 1,000 times more heartbreaking. Because this wasn't just a story about an abandoned dog. This was a story about a murder covered up for 18 months, a dark secret buried in snow, and a truth that would bring grown men to their knees weeping. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Ranger had been at Pinewood longer than any other dog, a massive German Shepherd with a broad chest, thick black and tan coat, and eyes the color of burnt amber. He was as intimidating as he was feared. On his intake card, someone had scrawled in red marker, "Extreme caution, former K9, aggressive behavior, severe bite risk." This story touched millions of hearts. Has it touched yours? Let us know with a like, comment yes, and subscribe for more amazing stories like this. Every morning, volunteers approached his kennel with dread. He'd stand rigid at the bars, teeth bared, his entire body trembling with barely contained rage. No matter how softly they spoke, no matter what treats they offered, Ranger never relaxed. "He's too far gone," one staff member whispered as she slid his water bowl through the slot. "Some dogs just never recover." No one knew exactly what had broken him. Ranger had been brought in 18 months ago after his handler, Detective Sarah Mitchell, was killed in the line of duty. He'd been there that night, witnessed everything, the gunshots, the blood, Sarah falling. Since then, he hadn't wagged his tail. Not once. Instead, he paced back and forth all day, every day, like a caged wolf searching for something he couldn't find. His claws scraped against concrete, wearing grooves into the floor. And when the shelter grew quiet at night, his deep, aching howls carried through the halls, breaking even the hardest hearts. They weren't just howls. They sounded almost human, like someone crying out in grief. Most people stopped believing he could ever be saved. The shelter director had already scheduled the date. 3 more weeks, and if no one claimed him, Ranger would be put down. It was the humane thing to do, they said. He was suffering, but then a phone call changed everything. Margaret Maggie Thornton, the shelter's owner, sat in her office that snowy January morning, staring at a file she'd kept hidden for months. Inside was a photograph. Detective Sarah Mitchell in her police uniform, smiling, with Ranger sitting proudly beside her. And next to Sarah stood another officer, a dark-haired man with kind eyes. Ethan Graves. Maggie had known Sarah since the girl was 6 years old. She'd raised her after Sarah's parents died, and she knew that if anyone could reach Ranger, it would be the man Sarah had trusted most. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. "What?" "Ethan, it's Maggie Thornton. From Pinewood Rescue." Silence. Then, "I don't want a dog, Maggie." "This isn't about what you want," she said firmly. "It's about what you need, and what he needs." She paused. "Ethan, I have Sarah's K9. Ranger, he's been here for 18 months, and he's dying inside." Another long silence. And when Ethan spoke again, his voice cracked. "Ranger, he's still alive?" "Barely. And Ethan," Maggie's voice dropped to a whisper, "he was there that night. He saw everything. He knows what really happened to Sarah." The winter wind cut through Ethan Graves like a knife as he sat outside Pinewood Animal Rescue. Snow fell in thick curtains, blanketing his wheelchair, But he barely noticed. His hands gripped the armrest so tightly his knuckles turned white. 18 months. It had been 18 months since that night, since the gunshots, since Sarah's blood pooled on the frozen ground, since the bullet tore through his spine, stealing his legs and leaving him half a man. The passenger door of the van opened and Deputy Frank Wallace stepped out. "You sure about this, Ethan? We can turn around. Go home." Ethan shook his head. "I need to see him." Frank wheeled him toward the entrance, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Inside, Maggie waited by the reception desk, her silver hair pulled back in a bun. When she saw Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, taking his cold hand in hers. "Where is he?" Ethan's voice was barely audible. Maggie glanced down the hallway toward the back kennels. "Before we go, you need to understand, he's not the same dog you remember. What he saw that night, what he's been through, it broke something inside him." "I know what that feels like," Ethan said quietly. They moved through the shelter past rows of kennels. Dogs barked excitedly, tails wagging, pressing against the bars for attention. A golden retriever licked at the air as they passed. A beagle spun in circles, desperate for love. But Ethan's eyes stayed fixed on the end of the corridor, where a single kennel sat apart from the others, shrouded in shadow. As they approached, the temperature seemed to drop. The other dogs fell silent, as if sensing something dark ahead. Then Ethan heard it, a low rumbling growl that vibrated through the air like distant thunder. Dr. James Cooper, the shelter's veterinarian, stepped into their path. His face was grave. "Ethan, I need to be clear about what you're walking into. Ranger has attacked 3 staff members. We've had to sedate him twice. He doesn't eat unless we slide food in from a distance. And at night," Cooper's voice faltered. "At night, the sounds he makes aren't natural. It's like he's mourning." "Move," Ethan said simply. Cooper stepped aside, and Frank wheeled Ethan closer. The kennel came into view. Inside, barely visible in the dim light, stood Ranger. The magnificent German shepherd that Ethan remembered, Sarah's proud partner, her protector, was gone. In his place stood a hollow creature. His ribs showed through his coat. His once bright amber eyes were dull, haunted. A long scar ran across his right flank, a souvenir from that terrible night. When Ranger saw the wheelchair approaching, his lips curled back, revealing yellowed fangs. The growl intensified, rising to a snarl. His entire body coiled like a spring ready to explode. "Jesus," Frank muttered, hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. "Ethan, maybe we should—" "No!" Ethan raised a hand. "Everyone step back." "Ethan," Maggie started. "I said step back." The command in his voice made them all retreat. Ethan was left alone, 5 feet from the kennel bars, staring into the eyes of a dog who'd witnessed the same nightmare he had. Ranger's snarl grew louder. He lunged at the bars. Clang! The impact reverberating through the room. Maggie gasped. Frank's hand tightened on his weapon. But Ethan didn't flinch. He simply sat there, looking at Ranger with an expression that was equal parts grief and understanding. "Ranger," he said softly. "It's me, Ethan." The dog's ears flicked forward, then back. The snarling continued. But there was something else now. Confusion flickering in those amber eyes. "I know you remember me, boy. We worked together, you, me, and Sarah." Ethan's voice cracked on her name. "We were a team." Ranger's growl wavered, becoming a low, uncertain rumble. Ethan took a shaky breath. "I was there, Ranger, that night. I was there with you." The growling stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the other dogs had gone quiet, as if the entire shelter was holding its breath. Ranger stood perfectly still, his body rigid, eyes locked on Ethan. Something was happening behind those eyes, recognition maybe, or remembrance of something buried deep. "I couldn't save her," Ethan continued, his voice breaking. "I tried, God knows I tried, but I wasn't fast enough. The bullets, they came so fast. And when I woke up in the hospital, when they told me she was gone—" Tears streamed down his face now, unchecked. "They told me you'd disappeared. That animal control couldn't find you. I thought you were dead too." A sound emerged from Ranger's throat, not a growl but something else. A whimper, raw and painful, like a wound reopening. "But you're not dead," Ethan whispered. "You're here. You survived." "Just like me." He gestured at his useless legs. "We both survived, but we didn't really live, did we?" Ranger's rigid stance began to soften. His shoulders dropped slightly. The tension in his muscles eased just a fraction. "I know you're angry," Ethan said. "I'm angry too. Angry at the world. Angry at God. Angry at myself for not being fast enough, strong enough, good enough to save her." His voice rose, raw with 18 months of suppressed agony. "She was my best friend, Ranger. My best friend, and I let her die." The words echoed through the shelter. Ethan buried his face in his hands, his body shaking with sobs he'd held back for too long. The dam had finally broken, and everything poured out, the grief, the guilt, the unbearable weight of survival. Through his tears he heard movement, slow, hesitant footsteps. Ethan looked up. Ranger had moved to the front of the kennel. The aggression was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like recognition, understanding. The dog sat down slowly, never breaking eye contact with Ethan. Then, with a motion that seemed to cost him everything, Ranger lowered his head to his paws. A single, mournful whine escaped him, the sound of a heart that had been shattered and never healed. "She loved you," Ethan said through his tears. "Sarah loved you so much. You were her partner, her friend, and she would hate seeing you like this. She would hate seeing us both like this, broken, angry, giving up." Ranger's ears moved forward, fully attentive now. "She'd want us to live, Ranger, not just survive. Live." Ethan wiped his face with the back of his hand. "She'd want us to help each other, like she helped everyone." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Ranger stood. Slowly, deliberately, he walked to the kennel bars. His eyes, those haunted amber eyes, were different now. There was something in them Ethan hadn't seen before, a tiny spark, the faintest glimmer of the loyal K9 he used to be. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling as it moved toward the bars. Behind him, he heard Maggie gasp, heard Frank take a step forward, but he didn't stop. His fingers passed through the bars into the kennel. Ranger looked at the hand. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the German shepherd leaned forward. His wet nose touched Ethan's fingertips, just barely, as if testing whether this was real or another cruel dream. Ethan held his breath. "It's okay, boy. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Ranger pressed his muzzle into Ethan's palm. His eyes closed. And then, for the first time in 18 months, the tension drained from his body. His legs trembled. A sound emerged from deep within his chest. Not a growl, not a whimper, but something that sounded heartbreakingly like relief. Ethan's other hand moved to the bars, and Ranger leaned his full weight against them, pushing his head through the gap, seeking the contact he'd denied himself for so long. "I've got you," Ethan whispered, both hands now cradling the dog's massive head. "We've got each other." Behind them, Maggie pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Cooper stood frozen, witnessing something he'd thought impossible. Frank slowly released his grip on his weapon, his own eyes glistening. Ranger's whole body shuddered, and he made a sound, a deep, guttural cry that was part howl, part sob. It was the sound of grief finally being acknowledged, of pain finally being shared. And in that moment, in a cold kennel in Montana, two broken souls found each other in the wreckage of their shared trauma. 3 hours later, Ethan sat in Maggie's cramped office while she prepared the adoption papers. Through the window, he could see Ranger in a small outdoor pen, pacing again, but differently now. Not the frantic, desperate circles of before. These movements were purposeful, deliberate, a soldier on patrol. "He's never let anyone touch him before," Dr. Cooper said, leaning against the door frame. "In 11 months, not once, until today." Ethan didn't respond. He was staring at the forms in front of him, his hands trembling. The reality of what he was about to do was sinking in. He could barely take care of himself. How could he care for a traumatized 70-pound German shepherd? "You don't have to do this," Frank said gently, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Nobody would judge you if you walked away." "I'm not walking anywhere," Ethan said bitterly, gesturing at his wheelchair. Frank winced. "You know what I mean." Maggie set the papers down in front of Ethan. Her weathered hands were steady, but her eyes were fierce. "Before you sign, there's something you need to know." She pulled a worn photograph from a manila envelope and placed it on the desk. Ethan's breath caught. It was Sarah, maybe 10 years old, standing next to a younger Maggie. Sarah's smile was missing 2 front teeth. "She was my foster daughter," Maggie said quietly. "From age 6 until she turned 18. Her parents died in a car accident. No other family wanted her, so I took her in." She touched the photo with one finger. "She was the daughter I never had, and when she joined the police academy I was so proud and so terrified." Ethan looked up at her, understanding dawning. "You're the one who called me. You knew I was Sarah's partner." "I knew you were more than her partner," Maggie corrected. "She talked about you all the time. 'Ethan's the best cop I know,' she'd say. 'He'd take a bullet for anyone.'" Maggie's voice broke. "And you did." "You took a bullet trying to save her." The guilt twisted in Ethan's chest like a knife. "I failed." "No," Maggie said sharply. "You loved her enough to try. That's not failure." She pushed the adoption papers closer. "Ranger was Sarah's K-9 partner for 3 years. But before that, he was something else." She pulled out another photo. This one showed a younger Sarah in civilian clothes, kneeling beside a small boy, maybe 6 years old, with a German shepherd puppy between them. The boy's face was alight with joy. "That's Tommy," Maggie said. "Sarah's son." The room fell silent. Even Frank looked shocked. "Sarah had a son?" Ethan whispered. "She never told me. She never told anyone at the precinct. Tommy's father left before he was born. Sarah raised him alone while going through the academy. It was hell, but she managed." Maggie's finger traced the puppy in the photo. "Ranger was Tommy's dog first. Sarah bought him as a puppy to help Tommy feel safe when she worked night shifts, but when Ranger was 2, Sarah saw his potential. She had him trained as a K-9, and he passed with flying colors. Suddenly, he wasn't just Tommy's protector, he was Sarah's partner." Ethan stared at the photo, his mind reeling. "Where's Tommy now?" "Living with his grandparents in Idaho. Sarah's ex-in-laws. They're good people." Maggie's voice dropped. "But since Sarah died, Tommy hasn't spoken. Not one word in 18 months. The doctors say it's selective mutism from trauma. He saw the news reports. He knows his mother's gone, but—" She paused. "He doesn't understand why Ranger never came home." The pieces were falling into place now, and the picture they formed was devastating. "You kept Ranger here because you were waiting," Ethan said slowly. "Waiting for the right person." "I was waiting for you," Maggie confirmed. Sarah made me promise something before she died. Well, before that last shift, she had a feeling, that something bad might happen. She wrote a letter and gave it to me. She said, "If anything happens to me, give this to Ethan, and make sure he takes care of Ranger." Maggie reached into the envelope and pulled out a sealed letter, Sarah's handwriting on the front. "For Ethan, only if I don't come back." Ethan's hands shook as he took it. The paper felt impossibly heavy. For a long moment he just stared at his name, written in Sarah's familiar scrawl. Then with trembling fingers he broke the seal. The letter was short, written on lined notebook paper. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need you to know, it's not your fault. Whatever happened, whatever you did or didn't do, it's not your fault. You're the best partner I ever had, the best friend. You taught me what it means to be a good cop, not just following rules but protecting people because it's right. I need you to do something for me. Take care of Ranger. I know that sounds crazy because you've never had a dog and God knows you can barely take care of yourself. You eat takeout 4 nights a week, Ethan. Vegetables exist. But Ranger needs you. More than that, you need him. I see it in you, partner. The weight you carry, the guilt over things you couldn't control, the way you take responsibility for everything bad that happens on our watch. You're going to blame yourself for my death. I know you. You're probably blaming yourself right now. Don't. Take Ranger. Let him help you. He's a good boy, the best, and he understands loss. He'll understand yours. Live, Ethan. Don't just survive. Live. For both of us. Your partner, Sarah. P.S. Ranger likes peanut butter on his kibble. Don't ask me why. Just trust me." Ethan read the letter 3 times, tears dripping onto the paper, smearing the ink. His chest felt like it was being crushed. Sarah had known. Somehow, she'd known what would happen. And even facing death, her last thoughts were about protecting him. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew I'd need him." Maggie nodded. Sarah was like that, always thinking 5 steps ahead, always taking care of people. She pushed the adoption papers forward again. "So, will you honor her wishes?" Ethan looked out the window at Ranger. The dog had stopped pacing and was staring directly at the office window. At him. Even from this distance, Ethan could see the intensity in those amber eyes, the intelligence, the pain that mirrored his own. "What if I can't do it?" Ethan asked quietly. "What if I make things worse? I can't even walk, Maggie. I can't run after him if he bolts. I can't—" "You don't need to walk," Dr. Cooper interrupted. "You need to love him, and from what I just witnessed, you already do." Frank squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "Brother, I've known you 15 years, since the academy, and I've never seen you back down from anything." "Don't start now." Ethan picked up the pen. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every doubt, every fear, every reason this was a terrible idea screamed in his mind. He was broken. Useless. What could he possibly offer this dog? But then he remembered Ranger's eyes when they'd connected through the kennel bars, the way the dog had leaned into his touch like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. They were both drowning. Maybe, just maybe, they could save each other. He signed his name. Maggie exhaled, relief flooding her face. "Thank you, Ethan. Sarah would be so grateful." "Don't thank me yet," Ethan muttered. "I might return him in a week." "No, you won't," Maggie said with absolute certainty. "Because in a week, you won't be able to imagine life without him." An hour later, Ethan sat in the parking lot, Ranger in the back of Frank's van. They'd skipped the usual procedures, no meet and greet in a neutral space, no trial period. Dr. Cooper had simply opened Ranger's kennel, and the dog had walked straight to Ethan's wheelchair. No leash needed. Now, as Frank drove them to Ethan's small cabin outside town, Ranger sat behind Ethan's seat, his massive head resting on Ethan's shoulder. Ethan could feel the dog's breath on his neck, warm and steady. "He's already attached to you," Frank observed. "I've never seen anything like it." Ethan reached back and touched Ranger's head. The dog's eyes closed, and for the first time in 18 months, he looked almost peaceful. "We're both attached to a ghost," Ethan said quietly. "Maybe that's what we need. Someone who understands what we lost." The van pulled up to Ethan's cabin as the sun set behind the Montana mountains, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of orange and pink. Frank helped Ethan into his wheelchair, and together they watched as Ranger stepped out of the van. The dog stood in the snow, looking around carefully. His body was tense again, alert. Then his eyes found Ethan, and he walked over, sitting directly beside the wheelchair. Not in front, not behind, beside, as if they were partners. "Well," Frank said, handing Ethan Ranger's leash, though it seemed unnecessary. "This is it. You sure you don't want me to stay?" Ethan looked at Ranger, then at his small, dark cabin. For 18 months, he'd lived there alone, drowning in grief and whiskey. But tonight, the cabin wouldn't be empty. "We'll be okay," Ethan said, and for the first time in 18 months, he almost believed it. Frank drove away, leaving Ethan and Ranger alone in the fading light. "Well, boy," Ethan said, wheeling toward the ramp he'd built to his front door. "Welcome home, whatever that means anymore." Ranger followed, his paws crunching in the snow. And when Ethan opened the door and entered the cold, dark cabin, Ranger didn't hesitate. He walked inside, turned once in a circle, and lay down directly beside the wheelchair. In that moment, as darkness fell over Montana, two broken souls began the long journey of healing. Together, the first night was hell. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Ranger pace downstairs, back and forth, the click of claws on hardwood echoing through the cabin. Every few minutes the pacing would stop, and Ethan would hear it, a low, mournful whine that sounded almost human. Around 2 in the morning, the whining turned into howling, deep, primal howls that seemed to come from the very depths of Ranger's soul. The sound cut through Ethan like glass because he recognized it. It was the same sound that wanted to tear out of his own throat every night. The sound of unbearable grief. Ethan pulled himself into his wheelchair and descended via the chairlift he'd installed. He found Ranger standing at the front door, staring at it, his body rigid. "She's not coming home, boy," Ethan said quietly. "She's never coming home." Ranger turned to look at him, and in the dim light, Ethan saw something devastating. The dog's face was wet. Dogs couldn't cry, not really, but Ranger's eyes were streaming, and the moisture had soaked the fur around his muzzle. "I know," Ethan whispered. "I know it hurts." He wheeled closer. Ranger watched him approach, but didn't move. When Ethan was close enough, he reached out and placed his hand on the dog's head. Ranger's whole body was trembling. "Come here," Ethan said, patting his lap. Ranger hesitated, then did something unexpected. He walked over and placed his head on Ethan's thigh, the only part of his legs Ethan could still feel sensation in. The weight was grounding, real. "We're going to get through this," Ethan said, more to himself than to Ranger. "Somehow, we have to." They stayed like that until dawn broke over the mountains, neither of them sleeping, both of them surviving minute by minute. The first week revealed patterns. Ranger wouldn't eat unless Ethan ate first. Every single meal the dog would sit beside his bowl, waiting, watching, until Ethan took a bite of his own food. Only then would Ranger eat, and even then, just enough to survive. "You're punishing yourself," Ethan observed on the third day, watching Ranger leave half his food untouched. "You think you don't deserve to eat because you couldn't save her." Ranger's ears flicked back, and he looked away. Ethan felt a chill run through him. "That's it, isn't it? You think it's your fault? You were trained to protect her, and you couldn't." He paused. "I know exactly how you feel." That night, Ethan did something he hadn't done since the shooting. He pulled out the case file, the official report on Sarah's death. He'd avoided reading it, knowing it would destroy him. But now, with Ranger lying beside his wheelchair, he needed to understand. The report was clinical, cold. Detective Sarah Mitchell, badge number 4799, was fatally shot during pursuit of armed robbery suspect Michael Cordell. Detective Mitchell and Detective Ethan Graves had cornered the suspect in an alley off Morrison Street when Cordell opened fire. Detective Mitchell was struck 3 times, chest, abdomen, and throat. Detective Graves was hit once in the lower back, resulting in spinal cord injury. K-9 Unit Ranger was present but unable to prevent the attack. Suspect Cordell was apprehended at the scene. Detective Mitchell was pronounced dead at 11:47 p.m. Ethan's hands shook as he read, but something caught his eye. A detail he'd never noticed before, probably because he'd been unconscious when the initial reports were filed. K-9 Ranger sustained defensive wounds consistent with an attack on the suspect. Bite marks on Cordell's right arm and leg suggest the dog attempted to neutralize the threat. However, Ranger was kicked repeatedly and temporarily incapacitated. Ethan looked down at Ranger, who was watching him intently. "You tried to save her. You fought for her." The scar on Ranger's right flank. Ethan had assumed it was from a bullet, but now, reading the report more carefully, he saw it was from being kicked into a metal dumpster. Ranger had been beaten trying to protect Sarah. "You didn't fail her," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "You did everything you could, just like I did." Ranger's tail moved, just slightly, barely a wag. But it was the first voluntary movement of happiness Ethan had seen from him. "We both tried," Ethan continued, "and we both survived when she didn't. That's not failure, boy. That's just the worst kind of luck." By the second week, routines emerged. Every morning at 6, Ranger would nudge Ethan's hand with his cold nose, waking him, not gently, insistently, pushing until Ethan opened his eyes. Then Ranger would walk to the window and stare at it until Ethan opened the curtains. "You're forcing me to see daylight," Ethan muttered on day 9. "Sarah used to do the same thing. She'd call me every morning at 6:15 just to make sure I was up." Ranger turned from the window and stared at him with those intelligent amber eyes. Then he walked to Ethan's wheelchair and placed his paw on the footrest. All right, I get it. Time to start the day." But the nights were still brutal. Around 9 p.m. every evening, the time Sarah had died, Ranger would become agitated. He'd pace to the front door, whine, then return to Ethan, then go back to the door. It was heartbreaking to watch. On the 10th night, Ethan wheeled to the door and opened it. "You want to check? Go ahead. See for yourself." Ranger bolted outside into the snow. Ethan watched as the dog ran to the driveway, then to the road, then back, nose to the ground, searching. After 20 minutes, Ranger returned, covered in snow, his body language defeated. "She's not out there," Ethan said gently. "She's gone, buddy. And I know that's impossible to accept because I can't accept it either. But we have to try." Ranger walked inside and for the first time didn't go to his bed. Instead, he climbed onto the couch, something he'd never done, and lay down with a heavy sigh. The message was clear. He was exhausted from searching for someone who would never return. Ethan wheeled over and placed his hand on Ranger's side, feeling the rise and fall of the dog's breathing. "Tomorrow," he whispered. We'll try again tomorrow, and the day after, until it hurts a little less. The breakthrough came on day 14. Ethan was in the kitchen attempting to make coffee when he dropped the container. Grounds exploded across the floor, and Ethan stared at the mess, feeling the familiar wave of helplessness wash over him. He couldn't bend down to clean it. Couldn't kneel. Couldn't do any of the simple things he'd taken for granted before that bullet. God damn it! He slammed his fist on the counter. I can't even make coffee. I can't do anything. Ranger appeared in the doorway, ears alert. He looked at Ethan, then at the mess, then back at Ethan. Then he did something remarkable. He walked to the closet where Ethan kept cleaning supplies, nosed it open, and dragged out a small hand broom by its handle. He brought it to Ethan and dropped it in his lap. Ethan stared at the broom, then at Ranger. You just problem solved. Ranger's tail wagged. A real wag this time, full and confident. Sarah trained you to retrieve tools, didn't she? When she was working crime scenes. Another wag. Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. Not grief this time, but something else. Possibility. Show me what else you can do. For the next hour, Ranger demonstrated skills Ethan hadn't known he possessed. The dog could open doors, turn on lights with his paw, retrieve specific items by name. Sarah had trained him not just as an attack dog, but as a full partner, adaptable, intelligent, capable. She trained you for someone like me, didn't she? Ethan realized. She knew. Even before the shooting, she knew one day you might need to help someone who couldn't do things on their own. Ranger barked, once, sharp and clear. Confirmation. Ethan laughed, and the sound was strange in the cabin. He couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed. All right, partner. Let's see if we can figure this out together. That night, something shifted. When 9 p.m. came and Ranger grew agitated, Ethan tried something different. He pulled out his old guitar, hadn't touched it since the shooting, and began to play. Nothing complicated, just simple chords, the way his father had taught him as a boy. Ranger's ears perked up. He stopped pacing and tilted his head, listening. Then, slowly, he walked over and lay down beside the wheelchair, his head resting on Ethan's foot. Ethan played until his fingers ached, and for the first time in 2 weeks, Ranger didn't howl when darkness fell. Instead, he slept, his breathing deep and even, finally at peace. Music soothes the savage beast, Ethan murmured, remembering the old saying. Or in our case, the broken ones. As he set the guitar aside, Ethan realized something profound. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were learning to live with the loss, to carry Sarah's memory without being crushed by it. It was a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. And outside, the Montana snow continued to fall, covering the world in white, a blank slate, a fresh start, a promise that even in the deepest winter, spring would eventually come. 3 weeks after Ranger came home, Deputy Frank Wallace appeared at Ethan's door holding a manila envelope. His expression was troubled, and he wouldn't meet Ethan's eyes. "What is it?" Ethan asked, wheeling backward to let Frank inside. Ranger immediately positioned himself between the two men, not aggressive, but watchful. Frank hesitated, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something. About the night Sarah died." Ethan's blood turned cold. "What about it? Can we sit?" They moved to the living room. Ranger remained standing, his attention fixed on Frank with an intensity that made the deputy uncomfortable. "Easy, boy," Ethan said, touching Ranger's head. The dog sat but remained alert, every muscle coiled. Frank opened the envelope and pulled out a letter, handwritten on yellow legal paper. "Michael Cordell sent this from prison. It arrived at the station last week. Captain wanted to throw it away, but I thought you deserved to see it. Why would I want to read anything from the man who killed Sarah? Ethan's voice was sharp, bitter. Just read it, please. Ethan took the letter with trembling hands. The handwriting was messy, like someone had written it in a hurry or under great emotional distress. Detective Graves, I know you have no reason to believe anything I say. I killed your partner. I destroyed your life. I took away someone you loved. But I need you to know the truth, even if you never believe it. I didn't shoot Detective Mitchell. I was there. I was running. I was desperate and stupid and terrified because my son was dying and I'd just robbed a bank to try to save him. But when we ended up in that alley, when you and Detective Mitchell cornered me, I dropped my gun. I remember it clearly. It fell into the snow and I put my hands up. Then the shots came. But they didn't come from me. They came from behind me, behind you. Someone else was there, someone in uniform. I saw him for just a second before I was tackled by that dog of hers. But I saw enough. I saw a badge. I saw him shoot Detective Mitchell. I saw him shoot you. And then I saw him point his gun at me and say, "You're taking the blame for this, or your kid dies tonight." My son Lucas was in the hospital. Leukemia. He was 8 years old and dying. This man, he knew that. He told me he had someone watching Lucas's room. Said if I didn't confess to the shooting, my boy would have an accident, a medication error, a disconnected monitor, something that would look like hospital negligence. So I confessed. I took the blame, because I couldn't let my son die. But here's the thing. Lucas died anyway. 3 months ago. The cancer took him, and now I have nothing left to lose. No reason to keep protecting the man who really killed your partner. His name is Deputy Morrison. Ryan Morrison. He was there that night. He pulled the trigger. I don't expect you to forgive me for my cowardice, for letting an innocent woman's killer go free while I sat in prison. But I couldn't let my son die. You understand that, don't you? A father will do anything to protect his child. I'm planning to end my life after I send this. By the time you read it, I'll be gone. There's nothing left for me here. But before I go, I wanted you to know the truth. Detective Mitchell didn't die because of my robbery. She died because she discovered something about corruption in your department, and Morrison silenced her for it. The dog knows. The K9. He was there. He saw everything. He knows Morrison is the killer. Find the truth, Detective Graves. Find justice for her. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to tell it sooner. Michael Cordell. The letter fell from Ethan's hands. His mind was reeling, unable to process what he'd just read. This is insane. Morrison. Ryan Morrison has been my friend for 15 years. He testified at the trial. He helped convict Cordell. He visits me every week to check on me. He wouldn't. But even as he said it, something clicked in his memory. A flash of that night. He'd been on the ground, bleeding, fading in and out of consciousness. He remembered seeing someone standing over Sarah's body, a figure in uniform, and he'd assumed it was Morrison arriving as backup. But what if... "Ranger," Ethan said suddenly, looking at the dog. "The report said you attacked Cordell, but what if you weren't attacking him? What if you were trying to get to someone else?" Ranger's ears shot up. His body went rigid. "When Morrison visits," Ethan continued slowly, thinking out loud, "how does Ranger react?" Frank frowned. "He goes crazy, growling, snarling. You always have to put him in the other room. I thought he was just aggressive with men in general. PTSD from that night." "But," Ethan's heart was pounding now. Frank, what if Ranger knows? What if he's been trying to tell us all along that Morrison is the killer? Ethan, that's a serious accusation. We can't just... Can't what? Can't investigate because Morrison is one of us? Ethan's voice rose. Sarah was one of us too, and someone murdered her. Someone let a desperate father take the blame while the real killer walked free. Ranger was pacing now, agitated, whining. His eyes kept darting to the door, then back to Ethan. Frank ran a hand through his hair. Okay, say you're right. Say Morrison did it. Why? What possible motive could he have? The letter says Sarah discovered corruption. What if Morrison was involved? What if she was about to expose him? Then we need evidence. Real evidence, not just the word of a dead convict and an aggressive dog. Frank paused. Cordell mentioned that Sarah discovered something. Did she say anything to you before that night? Anything about an investigation? Ethan thought back, searching his memory. Sarah had been distracted the week before she died, quiet. He'd asked if something was wrong, but she'd brushed it off, said it was nothing. But there was one thing. She asked me about Morrison, Ethan said slowly. About a month before she died. She wanted to know how long I'd known him, if I trusted him. I said, of course I trusted him. We went through the academy together. She seemed troubled by my answer, like it wasn't what she wanted to hear. Frank leaned forward. What else? She mentioned something about case evidence going missing. Small things, drugs, money confiscated from crime scenes. She said she was tracking discrepancies in the evidence logs. Ethan's eyes widened. Jesus. She was investigating Morrison for evidence tampering, maybe theft. And if Morrison found out, he had to silence her. A heavy silence fell over the room. The implications were staggering. If this was true, then everything about Sarah's death was a lie. The trial, the conviction, the closure everyone thought they'd found, all of it built on corruption and murder. Ranger suddenly barked, sharp and urgent. He ran to the window, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Ethan wheeled to the window and looked out. A car was pulling up the driveway. A familiar car. It's Morrison, Frank whispered. He's here. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. Why is he here? Frank's face had gone pale. Ethan, I need to tell you something. When that letter came in, Captain logged it in the evidence system. Morrison has access to those logs. If he saw it, he'd know we know, Ethan finished. We need to call for backup, now. But before Frank could reach for his radio, the front door exploded inward. Morrison stood in the doorway, gun drawn, his face twisted with rage. I knew that bastard Cordell would talk eventually. Should have killed him the day he got to prison. Ranger launched himself at Morrison with a ferocity that shook the room. But Morrison was ready. He fired, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Ranger yelped and fell, blood blooming on his shoulder. No! Ethan screamed. Frank drew his weapon, but Morrison was faster. Drop it, Frank! Or Ethan's next. Frank hesitated, then slowly placed his gun on the floor. Morrison kicked it away, keeping his weapon trained on them. You couldn't just let it go, could you? She was the same way. Sarah, always digging, always asking questions. I tried to warn her, told her some things were better left alone, but she wouldn't listen. You killed her, Ethan said, his voice shaking with rage. You murdered your own colleague, our friend. She wasn't my friend, Morrison spat. She was going to destroy everything I'd built. 15 years of supplementing my income, and she was going to expose it all for what, justice? There's no justice in this world, Ethan. There's only survival. On the floor, Ranger was struggling to get up, blood soaking his fur. His eyes were fixed on Morrison with pure hatred. The robbery call that night, Ethan said, pieces falling into place. You responded first. You were already there when we arrived. You set it up. You knew Sarah was closing in on you, so you created the perfect situation to kill her and blame it on Cordell. Morrison smiled coldly. She was smart, I'll give her that. But not smart enough. Found out I was skimming from evidence. Drugs, cash, weapons, selling them back on the street. Small amounts nobody would miss. But Sarah, she noticed patterns. Started building a case. He laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? I called in that robbery as a distraction, a way to get her alone. Cordell was just a desperate idiot in the wrong place at the wrong time. Perfect patsy. And me? Ethan asked. Why shoot me? You weren't supposed to be there. You were supposed to be on the other end of the alley, but you stayed close to Sarah, always protecting her. So you became collateral damage. Morrison shrugged. Though I have to admit, leaving you crippled instead of dead has been satisfying. Watching you suffer every day, knowing I did that to you. Frank was inching toward his dropped weapon, but Morrison caught the movement. Don't even think about it. Ethan looked at Ranger, struggling to stand, blood pooling beneath him. The dog that had survived 18 months of grief and guilt, only to be shot down defending him. Something inside Ethan broke, not with despair, but with fury. You made one mistake, Ethan said quietly. What's that? You didn't kill him. Ethan pointed at Ranger, and he remembers everything. Morrison glanced at the wounded dog, and in that split second of distraction, Ranger found his strength. With a final, desperate lunge, he leaped at Morrison, jaws clamping onto the wrist holding the gun. Morrison screamed, the weapon flying from his grip. Frank dove for it, and Ethan propelled his wheelchair forward with all his strength, ramming into Morrison's legs. The corrupt deputy fell backward, Ranger still attached to his arm, snarling with 18 months of pent-up rage. Frank had the gun now, trained on Morrison. Don't move! Don't even breathe! Morrison lay on the floor, Ranger's teeth still buried in his wrist, blood everywhere, some the dog's, some Morrison's. The deputy's face was white with pain and fear. "Get him off me!" Morrison screamed. "Ranger, release!" Ethan commanded. Slowly, reluctantly, Ranger let go. He stumbled back to Ethan's wheelchair and collapsed beside it, breathing heavily, blood still flowing from his shoulder wound. Ethan's hands shook as he pressed them against Ranger's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Hold on, boy." Just hold on. Frank was on his radio, calling for backup in an ambulance. "Officer down, no, suspect down, and we need a vet. Emergency." Morrison lay handcuffed on the floor, staring at the ceiling. "It was just money," he muttered. "Just money. Was it worth dying for?" Ethan looked down at him with contempt. "You didn't kill Sarah for money. You killed her because she stood for something you'd forgotten. Honor, truth, justice." His voice broke. "She died for those things, and you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell knowing that." The emergency veterinary clinic was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Ethan sat in the waiting room, his hands still stained with Ranger's blood, staring at the surgery doors. Frank paced beside him, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with the department. Morrison was in custody at the hospital under armed guard, his confession being processed. But none of that mattered to Ethan right now. All that mattered was the dog fighting for his life behind those doors. "He saved us," Ethan whispered to no one in particular. "He saved us, and I couldn't protect him." Frank ended his call and sat beside him. "Ethan, you need to hear this. They found Sarah's investigation files. She'd hidden them in her locker at the station behind a false panel. Morrison had been stealing from evidence for years, over $200,000 worth of drugs and cash. Sarah had documented everything. Dates, amounts, everything. She was going to the FBI the day after she died. Ethan closed his eyes. She knew he might come after her. That's why she wrote that letter to me. Why she asked Maggie to make sure I took Ranger. There's more." Frank's voice was heavy. "Michael Cordell didn't commit suicide. The prison's reviewing security footage. Looks like Morrison paid someone inside to stage it. He was tying up loose ends. The surgery doors swung open and Dr. Cooper emerged, still in scrubs, his expression grave. Ethan's heart stopped. "He's alive," Cooper said quickly, seeing the panic on Ethan's face. But it was close. The bullet missed his heart by centimeters. It shattered his shoulder blade. "I've stabilized him, but—" He paused. "Ethan, even if he survives, he may never be the same. The damage to his shoulder means he'll likely have limited mobility in that front leg. He won't be able to work as a K-9 again." "I don't care about that," Ethan said hoarsely. "I just need him to live. He's sedated now. You can see him in a few minutes. But Ethan, I need you to understand, the next 72 hours are critical. His body's been through tremendous trauma, physically and emotionally. Dogs can die from grief, from giving up. He needs a reason to fight." "He has one," Ethan said with certainty. "We're not done yet." 20 minutes later, Ethan wheeled into the recovery room. Ranger lay on a table, tubes and monitors attached to him, his shoulder heavily bandaged. His breathing was shallow, labored. The proud, powerful dog who'd attacked Morrison just hours ago now looked fragile, broken. Ethan maneuvered his wheelchair as close as possible and placed his hand on Ranger's head. The fur was matted with blood and antiseptic. "Hey, partner," he whispered. "It's me. I'm here." Ranger's ear twitched slightly, the only sign he could hear. "You did it, boy. You got him. Morrison's in custody." "Sarah's name is cleared." Ethan's voice cracked. "You avenged her. You got justice for her. But now I need you to do something else. I need you to fight. Fight to stay with me." No response. Just the steady beep of monitors. "I know you're tired. I know you've been fighting for so long, 18 months of grief and guilt and pain. I know part of you wants to go, wants to find Sarah, wherever she is." Tears streamed down Ethan's face. "But I need you here. I need you to stay, because I can't do this without you. I can't face the world without you beside me." Still nothing. Ethan leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching Ranger's. "Sarah asked me to take care of you. But the truth is, you've been taking care of me. From the moment we found each other, you've been the reason I get up every morning, the reason I keep going. You gave me purpose again." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "So please, Ranger, please don't leave me. Don't make me face this world alone again. We're partners now, and partners don't quit on each other." For a long moment, nothing changed. The monitors continued their monotonous rhythm. Ranger remained still, lost somewhere between life and death. Then, slowly, impossibly, Ranger's tail moved. Just once. A weak thump against the table. Ethan's breath caught. "That's it, boy. That's it. Come back to me." Dr. Cooper stepped into the room, checking the monitors. "His vitals are improving. Heart rate stronger." He looked at Ethan with something like wonder. "Whatever you said, keep saying it. It's working." For the next 3 days, Ethan barely left Ranger's side. He slept in his wheelchair beside the recovery table, waking every few hours to talk to the dog to remind him he wasn't alone. Frank brought food, clothes, and updates on the case. Maggie visited, sitting quietly with them, knitting and humming old hymns. The story had broken national news. "Heroic K-9 exposes corrupt cop." The headlines read, "Dog solves partner's murder after 18 months." Camera crews gathered outside the clinic. Everyone wanted the story of the dog who'd never given up seeking justice. But Ethan ignored it all. His world had narrowed to this room, this dog, this fight for survival. On the morning of the fourth day, Ethan woke to something warm and wet on his hand. He opened his eyes to find Ranger awake, weakly licking his fingers. Those amber eyes, clouded with pain but unmistakably aware, were looking directly at him. "Hey, partner," Ethan whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "Welcome back." Ranger's tail wagged, slightly, painfully, but it wagged. Dr. Cooper rushed in, alerted by the change in monitors. He examined Ranger thoroughly, a smile spreading across his tired face. "He's turned a corner. I think he's going to make it." Ethan buried his face in his hands and wept, not from grief this time, but from overwhelming relief. 2 weeks later, Ethan wheeled into the cabin with Ranger walking slowly beside him. The dog's front left leg was wrapped, and he moved with a pronounced limp. He would never run the way he used to, never leap or chase or perform the duties of a K9. But he was alive, and that was everything. Frank had helped arrange the cabin for Ranger's recovery, a soft bed on the ground floor, food and water within easy reach. As they entered, Ranger paused, sniffing the air, reacquainting himself with home. "Easy, boy," Ethan said. "One step at a time." Ranger limped to his bed, circled once with difficulty, and lay down with a heavy sigh. His eyes found Ethan's, and in them was something new. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it. The understanding that they'd both survived, and that was enough. That night, Frank stayed for dinner, the first real meal Ethan had cooked in months. As they ate, Frank updated him on the case. "Morrison's pleading guilty to everything. Murder, evidence tampering, conspiracy. He'll die in prison." Frank paused. "The FBI's also investigating. Turns out Morrison wasn't working alone. 3 other officers were involved in the theft ring. Sarah had identified all of them. They're all in custody now." "Sarah knew," Ethan said quietly. "She knew it was bigger than just Morrison. That's why she was so careful, why she hid her evidence so well. The department's establishing a memorial fund in her name for families of fallen officers." Frank smiled sadly. "And they're naming the new K9 training facility after her." Ethan looked at Ranger, sleeping peacefully for the first time in 18 months. She'd like that. She loved those dogs. "There's one more thing." Frank pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This came for you. From Idaho." Ethan opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a child's drawing, crude but heartfelt. It showed a boy, a woman in a police uniform, and a large dog. At the bottom, in shaky letters, "Thank you for finding who hurt Mommy. Love, Tommy." Below the child's writing was a note in adult handwriting. "Dear Detective Graves, Tommy spoke for the first time yesterday. His first words were, 'Ranger saved Mommy's memory.' We told him what happened, that Ranger helped find the truth. He wants to meet you both. If you're willing, we'd like to bring him to Montana. Sincerely, Linda Mitchell, Sarah's mother." Ethan stared at the letter, emotions overwhelming him. Tommy, Sarah's son, the boy Ranger had protected as a puppy, the child who'd lost his mother and his voice to grief, was speaking again. Finding the truth had freed them all. "What are you going to say?" Frank asked. Ethan looked at Ranger again. The dog had opened his eyes and was watching him with that steady, knowing gaze. "I'm going to say yes. Tommy should meet Ranger. They both loved Sarah. They both survived her loss. They should know each other." Frank nodded approvingly. "You know, Ethan, when Maggie first called you about Ranger, I thought she was crazy. I thought bringing that traumatized dog to your place was cruel to both of you. 2 broken souls trying to survive together. It seemed like a recipe for disaster. And now?" Frank smiled. Now I think she was the smartest person I know. You didn't just survive together. You healed each other. You saved each other." After Frank left, Ethan sat in the darkness with Ranger. Outside, snow was falling again, covering Montana in white silence. Inside, the cabin was warm, peaceful. The ghosts that had haunted these rooms for 18 months were finally resting. "We did it, boy," Ethan whispered. "We found the truth. We got justice for her." Ranger lifted his head and placed it on Ethan's lap, the same gesture from that first night in the shelter, but different now. Then it had been two drowning people grabbing at each other for survival. Now it was two survivors standing together, having weathered the storm. Ethan pulled out his guitar and began to play softly. Ranger's eyes closed, his breathing deep and even. No more pacing, no more howling, just peace. As Ethan played, he thought about Sarah, about her courage, her dedication, her sacrifice. She'd died seeking truth, and in death she'd brought together the two souls who loved her most, a broken detective and a traumatized dog, and given them a chance to heal each other. "Thank you, Sarah," Ethan whispered between chords. "Thank you for Ranger. Thank you for knowing exactly what we both needed. Thank you for not giving up on us, even after you were gone." Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside, for the first time in 18 months, Ethan Graves felt something he'd thought he'd lost forever: hope. And beside him, his partner, his true, loyal, unbreakable partner, slept peacefully, finally free from the nightmares that had haunted him. Together they'd found their way through the darkness. Together they'd found their way home. 3 weeks after Morrison's arrest, a car pulled up to Ethan's cabin. Through the window, he watched an elderly couple emerge, followed by a small boy bundled in a winter coat. Tommy, Sarah's son, the child who'd been silent for 18 months. Ethan's hands trembled on the wheelchair armrests. Beside him, Ranger stood, ears perked, watching the visitors approach. His tail began to wag, slowly at first, then faster, more insistently. He knew that scent, remembered that boy. The doorbell rang. Ethan took a deep breath and wheeled to answer it. When he opened the door, Tommy stood there, small and fragile-looking, his eyes wide with recognition as they landed on Ranger. "Ranger?" the boy whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. The dog whined, his whole body trembling with restrained emotion. He looked up at Ethan, seeking permission. "Go ahead, boy," Ethan said softly. Ranger limped forward, his injured leg dragging slightly. Tommy dropped to his knees, and dog and boy collided in an embrace that seemed to hold 18 months of grief. Tommy buried his face in Ranger's fur, and his small body shook with sobs. "I missed you," Tommy cried. "I missed you so much. I thought you were gone too." Ranger licked the boy's face, his tail wagging frantically despite the pain it caused his injured shoulder. For the first time since Sarah's death, the dog seemed completely whole, not healed, but complete. Sarah's mother, Linda, stepped forward, tears streaming down her weathered face. "He hasn't cried since the funeral. The doctor said he was blocking everything out. But now—" "Let them be," Ethan said quietly, watching the reunion. "They need this." For 20 minutes, Tommy and Ranger remained on the floor, the boy whispering things Ethan couldn't hear, the dog listening with complete attention. Finally, Tommy looked up at Ethan, his face tear-stained but no longer blank. There was life in his eyes again. "You found who hurt Mommy," Tommy said. "Grandma told me. Ranger helped you find the bad man." Ethan wheeled closer, coming down to the boy's eye level. "Ranger's a hero, Tommy. He never stopped looking for the truth, never stopped trying to get justice for your mom. Are you the detective Mommy talked about?" "Ethan?" "I am." Tommy studied him for a moment, taking in the wheelchair, the sadness in Ethan's eyes that probably mirrored his own. "Mommy said you were the bravest person she knew. She said you'd always protect people." Ethan's throat tightened. "Your mother was braver than I ever was. The bad man hurt you too, didn't he? That's why you have the chair." "Yes, but Ranger helped me, just like he's helping you now." Tommy looked at Ranger, then back at Ethan. "Can I visit him sometimes?" "Ranger, I mean. Grandma and Grandpa live far away, but maybe sometimes." Linda stepped forward, placing a hand on her grandson's shoulder. "Actually, that's something we wanted to discuss." She looked at Ethan. "We've been thinking about moving back to Montana. Tommy needs to be closer to his mother's memory, to heal properly. And we think being near Ranger would help." "We've already found a house in town," Sarah's father, Robert, added. 10 minutes from here. If you're comfortable with Tommy visiting." Ethan looked at Ranger, who was staring at Tommy with complete devotion, then back at the boy. "I'd like that. I think Ranger would like that too." Tommy's face lit up, the first real smile, Linda later told him, since Sarah died. "Really? I can come see him?" "Anytime you want." That night, after the Mitchells left, Ethan sat with Ranger in the quiet cabin. The dog seemed different, lighter somehow, as if seeing Tommy had lifted a weight he'd been carrying. "You raised that boy," Ethan said, stroking Ranger's head. "From a puppy, you watched over him. And today you gave him his voice back." Ranger's tail thumped against the floor. "I've been thinking," Ethan continued, "about what Dr. Cooper said, that you'll never work as a K-9 again. But maybe that's not the only way you can help people." Ranger tilted his head, listening intently. "What if we could help others like us, like Tommy, people who've lost someone, people who are drowning in grief?" Ethan pulled out his phone and showed Ranger a series of emails he'd been receiving since the story broke. "Look at these. Hundreds of messages from people asking for help. Veterans with PTSD, people who've lost partners, families destroyed by violence. They all want to know how we survived, how we found our way back." He scrolled through the messages, his voice growing more passionate. "There's a man here who lost his wife in a car accident. Says he can't get out of bed. A woman whose son died in Afghanistan. She hasn't spoken to anyone in 2 years. A child whose father was killed in the line of duty." Ethan looked at Ranger. "We could help them, not by being therapists or counselors, but by showing them it's possible to survive, to find purpose after loss." Over the next few weeks, an idea took shape. Ethan reached out to Maggie at the shelter, to Dr. Cooper, to Frank. Together, they developed a program. Second Chances, they called it. The concept was simple. Match people suffering from trauma and loss with rescue dogs who'd experienced similar pain. Let them heal each other. "Animals understand grief in ways humans sometimes can't," Dr. Cooper explained at their first planning meeting. "They don't judge. They don't expect you to get over it. They just sit with you in your pain until it becomes bearable." Maggie offered space at the shelter for meetings and training. Frank helped navigate the legal and insurance requirements. And Ethan would be the face of the program, the living proof that broken pieces could build something stronger. But it was Ranger who would be the heart of it, the ambassador, the dog who'd show other traumatized animals that healing was possible. 2 months after Tommy's first visit, the Second Chances program officially launched. The first participant was Marcus Webb, a 48-year-old veteran who'd lost both legs to an IED in Iraq and his service dog to cancer 6 months later. He sat in the shelter's meeting room, his wheelchair positioned across from Ethan's, his eyes hollow and defeated. "I don't know why I'm here. Marcus said flatly. "My therapist said I should try, but I don't see the point." Ethan understood that tone. He'd used it himself not long ago. "What did you lose?" "Everything. My legs, my independence, my dog. Rex was his name. German shepherd like yours. Best friend I ever had. When he died," Marcus's voice broke, "I lost my reason to keep fighting." Ranger, who'd been lying beside Ethan, stood up. Slowly, deliberately, he limped over to Marcus. The veteran watched, surprised, as Ranger placed his head on Marcus's lap, the same gesture he'd given Ethan that first night. "He's choosing you," Ethan said quietly. "He sees something in you. Maybe he sees himself." Marcus's hand, trembling, moved to Ranger's head. "He's hurt too. What happened to him? He was shot protecting me. He'll never work as a K-9 again, but he found a new purpose. He helps people now. People like us." "People like us," Marcus repeated, his fingers gently stroking Ranger's fur. "Broken people." "Not broken," Ethan corrected. "Rebuilt. There's a difference." Over the next hour, Ethan told Marcus his story. Sarah's death, the months of grief, the moment he met Ranger and realized he wasn't alone. Marcus listened, and slowly his expression changed. The hollowness receded, replaced by something that looked like recognition. "You really think a dog could help me?" Marcus asked. Ethan gestured to Ranger. "I know one can. There's a 3-year-old Belgian Malinois in the back, former military dog. His handler was killed in action. He's been aggressive, won't let anyone close. Reminds me of someone." He smiled slightly. Marcus looked at Ranger, still resting against him. "What if I fail? What if I can't help him?" "Then you'll fail together, and try again tomorrow." That's what Ranger and I did. We failed every day for weeks, but we kept trying. And eventually, the trying became healing. Marcus agreed to meet the Belgian Malinois. As they wheeled toward the kennels, Ranger staying close to both men, Marcus said something that stopped Ethan cold. "My wife left me after Rex died. She said I wasn't the same man she married. Said I'd become a stranger." Ethan nodded slowly. "Mine too. 2 months after I was shot. Does it stop hurting?" "No, but you learn to carry it differently, and having something, someone, to care for, to protect, to love." Ethan looked at Ranger. "It makes the weight bearable." The Belgian Malinois was named Duke. He was aggressive, traumatized, exactly as Ethan had described. When Marcus approached his kennel, Duke snarled and lunged at the bars just as Ranger once had. But Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he spoke in a low, steady voice. "I know, buddy. I know you're angry. I know you hurt. I know you think no one understands. But I do. I understand exactly what you're going through." Duke's snarling faltered. "I lost someone too. My best friend. Rex. He was like you. Brave. Loyal. Strong. When he died, I wanted to die too. I wanted to stop feeling. Stop remembering. Stop existing." Marcus gripped his wheelchair armrests. "But I'm here now. And I'm asking you to give me a chance. Give us both a chance. Maybe we can figure out how to live again, together." Duke sat down. His ears came forward, and in his eyes, the same thing Ethan had seen in Ranger's, a desperate, fragile hope. 3 weeks later, Marcus returned to the shelter with Duke walking calmly beside his wheelchair. The transformation was remarkable. Duke's coat was glossy, his eyes bright. Marcus himself looked different, clean-shaven, sitting straighter, actually smiling. "He saved my life," Marcus told Ethan. "Last week I was going to end it. Had the pills ready, but Duke knocked the bottle out of my hand. Then he did something amazing. He brought me his leash, like he was saying, "Not today. We've got a walk to take." Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. "That's what they do. They give us a reason to see tomorrow." "I want to help," Marcus said, "with the program. I want to help other vets find their Duke, their Ranger. I want to give back what you and this program gave me." By the end of the third month, second chances had matched 15 pairs. Each success story brought more requests, more people desperate for the kind of healing Ethan and Ranger had found. The program expanded beyond veterans to include police officers with PTSD, families who'd lost loved ones to violence, anyone drowning in grief who needed a lifeline. Tommy visited twice a week, spending hours with Ranger. Slowly, the boy came back to life. He laughed again, played again, started talking about his mother without breaking down, not forgetting her, but learning to live with her memory instead of being crushed by it. One evening, as Ethan watched Tommy throw a ball for Ranger in the snow, gentle throws that Ranger could manage with his injured leg, Linda approached. "Thank you," she said simply. "You gave us our grandson back." Ethan shook his head. "Ranger did that." "No, you both did. Sarah chose well. She knew exactly who could carry on her legacy." That night, alone with Ranger, Ethan reflected on the journey. 4 months ago, he'd been a broken man in a dark cabin, contemplating whether life was worth living. Now he was helping dozens of people find their way back from the abyss. Not because he'd found all the answers, but because he'd learned to live with the questions. "Sarah would be proud," he told Ranger, "of both of us. We took our pain and turned it into purpose. We took our loss and created something that helps others." Ranger's tail wagged, his eyes bright despite the late hour. "You know what the best part is?" Ethan continued. "Every person we help, every dog we save, it's like keeping Sarah alive. Her legacy isn't just in Tommy or in the K-9 training facility they're naming after her. It's in every second chance we give. Every life we help rebuild." Ranger placed his paw on Ethan's knee, the gesture that had become their language, their way of saying, "I'm here. We're in this together." And in that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Healing wasn't about forgetting the pain or moving past the loss. It was about carrying it forward, transforming it into something that honored those who were gone. Sarah's death had broken them, but in their breaking, they'd discovered how to help others piece themselves back together. That was the real miracle. Not that they'd survived, but what they'd built from the ruins. 6 months after the Second Chances program launched, Ethan received a call that would change everything again. It was from the Montana State Prison warden. "Detective Graves, we have a situation. Michael Cordell is alive." Ethan nearly dropped the phone. "That's impossible. He died 6 months ago. Morrison arranged it." "That's what we thought." But Cordell staged his own death with help from a guard who felt guilty about the whole situation. He's been in protective custody, gathering evidence against Morrison's entire operation. He wants to meet with you. Says he has information you need to hear. 2 days later, Ethan sat across from Michael Cordell in a private meeting room at the prison. The man looked haggard, older than his 42 years, his eyes carrying the weight of unbearable loss and guilt. Ranger sat beside Ethan's wheelchair, watchful but calm. "I'm sorry," Michael began, his voice cracking. "For everything. For not coming forward sooner. For letting you believe I killed Sarah." "Why now?" Ethan asked, his tone measured. "Why reveal yourself now?" Michael's hands trembled on the table. "Because I found out something. Something Morrison didn't want anyone to know." He pulled out a folder, sliding it across. "My son Lucas." He didn't die from leukemia. Ethan opened the folder, scanning medical records and documents. His blood ran cold as he read. "Sarah saved him," Michael continued, tears streaming down his face. "Before she died, she'd been investigating Morrison for months. She discovered he was skimming drug money from evidence. But she also discovered something else, a fund at the hospital. Morrison had been taking money meant for families who couldn't afford treatment. Sarah exposed it to the FBI, and they froze Morrison's accounts. Then she did something incredible." Michael's voice broke. "She used her own money, her life savings, money she'd been putting aside for Tommy's college, and paid for Lucas's treatment. Anonymously. The hospital called it a charitable donation and never told me who it came from. I only found out 2 months ago when a nurse who'd been there finally came forward." Ethan stared at the documents, his vision blurring. "Sarah paid for your son's treatment while you were in prison for a crime you didn't commit? She knew I was innocent, knew I was protecting my son, and instead of hating me, she saved him." Michael sobbed openly now. "Lucas is alive because of her. He's 10 years old, living with my parents, healthy and happy, and I've been sitting in this prison, letting the woman who saved my son's life go unavenged." "Morrison told you Lucas died," Ethan said slowly, understanding dawning. "To keep you silent, to make you think there was nothing left to fight for. He sent me fake death certificates, forged doctor's reports. I believed my son was dead. I had nothing left to lose, so I wrote that letter to you and tried to end it. But the guard who helped me, he'd lost a child too. He couldn't let me die without knowing the truth. He investigated, found out Lucas was alive, and showed me the records of Sarah's donation." Michael looked at Ethan with desperate intensity. "That's why I stayed hidden. I've been working with the FBI, building a case not just against Morrison but against the entire network of corruption Sarah had uncovered. 3 other officers, 2 evidence clerks, and a district attorney. All of them stealing, all of them dirty. Sarah died because she was about to expose all of them." Ethan sat back, overwhelmed. Sarah bankrupted herself to save the son of a man everyone thought killed her. She saw what others couldn't, that I was a father trying to save his child, not a murderer. She understood desperation, understood love. Michael's hands clenched. "Morrison knew if I ever learned the truth I'd destroy him, so he made sure I thought I had nothing to live for." "But you do," Ethan said quietly. "Lucas is alive. Sarah made sure of that. I can never repay what she did, but I can finish what she started. The FBI has everything now. Morrison and his entire network will go down. It'll take months, maybe years of trials, but they'll all pay for what they did." After the meeting, Ethan sat in his van, unable to move. Ranger sensed his distress and placed his head on Ethan's lap. The layers of Sarah's sacrifice kept unfolding, each one more devastating than the last. She hadn't just died for justice. She'd died after ensuring a child would live, after choosing compassion over vengeance. Frank was waiting at Ethan's cabin when he returned. "I heard about Cordell. It's all over the department. Morrison's screaming about it from his cell, claiming it's a setup." "It's real, Frank." "All of it." Ethan wheeled inside, Ranger following. Sarah didn't just investigate corruption. She actively saved lives while doing it. She saw a desperate father and helped him, even knowing it might cost her everything. "That was Sarah," Frank said softly. "She always believed in redemption. Always thought people deserved second chances." "Second chances," Ethan repeated, the words taking on new meaning. The program they'd built wasn't just about healing trauma. It was about honoring Sarah's core belief that everyone deserved an opportunity to be better, to do better. The next evening, Ethan organized an emergency meeting at the shelter. Everyone involved with second chances gathered. volunteers, participants, staff. Tommy sat in the front row with his grandparents, Ranger lying beside him. "I need to tell you something," Ethan began, his voice thick with emotion. "About Sarah Mitchell, the woman whose legacy inspired this program. About the kind of person she really was." He told them everything. About Michael Cordell, about Lucas, about Sarah's sacrifice, not just her life, but her savings, her future, her son's college fund, to save a child whose father everyone believed had killed her. The room fell silent. Several people were crying openly. "She didn't just believe in second chances," Ethan continued. "She gave them, even when it cost her everything, even when no one would know, even when there was no reward except knowing she'd done the right thing." Tommy stood up suddenly, his young voice clear in the quiet room. "My mommy always said, 'Tommy, we help people not because they deserve it, but because we can.'" Tears streamed down his face. "She helped that man's little boy because she could, because that's what heroes do." Linda pulled her grandson close, both of them crying. Around the room, others nodded, understanding the profound depth of Sarah's character. "Lucas Cordell is alive because of Sarah," Ethan said, "and this program, all of us here, we're alive because of what Sarah believed in. So I'm proposing we expand second chances, not just for trauma survivors, but for anyone who needs help, anyone society has written off, ex-convicts trying to rebuild their lives, addicts in recovery, people who've made mistakes but deserve a chance to do better." Marcus Webb wheeled forward, Duke walking steadily beside him. "Sarah saved that boy because she saw past his father's crime to his humanity. We need to do the same, give people the same grace she gave." Over the next weeks, the program transformed. They began partnering with halfway houses, bringing rescue dogs to work with people rebuilding their lives after incarceration. They connected with addiction recovery centers, matching dogs who'd been abused with humans fighting their own demons. Every pair became a testament to Sarah's belief in redemption. Michael Cordell's testimony led to 14 arrests. Morrison received 5 consecutive life sentences. The other corrupt officers faced decades in prison. The investigation Sarah had started finally bore fruit, cleaning out a cancer that had infected the department for years. But the most profound change came 3 months later. The warden called again. "Detective Graves, Michael Cordell has been exonerated, all charges dropped. The governor is issuing a full pardon based on the evidence he provided against Morrison." "When does he get out?" Ethan asked. "Tomorrow. And he wants to know if you'll be there. He has someone he wants you to meet." The next day, Ethan and Ranger waited outside the prison gates. Michael emerged, blinking in the sunlight, a free man for the first time in 18 months. Beside him was a small boy with his father's eyes, Lucas. Michael knelt before his son, embracing him tightly, both of them sobbing. Then he stood and walked toward Ethan, Lucas holding his hand. "Detective Graves, this is Lucas, my son, the boy Sarah saved." Lucas looked at Ethan with solemn eyes. "Are you the policeman who found out the truth about the bad man who hurt the lady who saved me?" "I am," Ethan said gently, "with help from Ranger here." Lucas knelt beside Ranger, who sniffed the boy carefully, then licked his face. The child laughed, a pure, joyful sound, and threw his arms around the dog's neck. "Thank you," Lucas said into Ranger's fur. "Thank you for helping find the truth." Michael's voice was thick with emotion. "I can never repay what Sarah did, but I can honor it. I want to help with second chances. I want to work with people who've been in prison, who've lost everything, who need someone to believe in them the way Sarah believed in me." "You don't owe us anything," Ethan said. "Yes, I do. I owe Sarah everything. My freedom, my son's life." And the only way to repay that debt is to pass it forward, to give others the same grace she gave me. That evening, as the sun set over Montana, Ethan sat on his porch with Ranger. Tommy was visiting, playing with Lucas in the yard. Two boys who'd both been saved by Sarah's compassion, now becoming friends. Frank sat in a chair beside Ethan, watching the children play. Sarah always said the measure of a person isn't how they treat their friends, but how they treat their enemies, Frank observed. Michael was technically her enemy, a criminal who led her into danger, but she saw past that to his humanity, to his desperation, and she saved his child. She saw what we all should see, Ethan replied. That circumstances can make anyone desperate. That one bad decision doesn't define a person's worth. That everyone deserves a second chance. Ranger's tail thumped against the porch. In the yard, Tommy was teaching Lucas how to throw a ball gently enough for Ranger to retrieve with his injured leg. The two boys laughed, and the sound carried on the evening breeze like music. Sarah's been gone almost 2 years, Ethan said quietly. But look at what she's still doing. Still changing lives, still saving people, through us, through second chances, through every person who learns her story and chooses compassion over judgment. That's legacy, Frank said, not monuments or plaques, but living, breathing change that ripples forward through time. Michael emerged from the cabin where he'd been meeting with Maggie about volunteer opportunities. He watched his son play, tears streaming down his face, tears of gratitude, of joy, of overwhelming relief. "Thank you," he said to Ethan, "for giving me the chance to be a father again, for not judging me for my worst mistake, for seeing me the way Sarah did, as someone worthy of redemption." Ethan extended his hand. Michael shook it firmly. In that handshake was forgiveness, understanding, and a shared commitment to honor the woman who'd saved them both in different ways. "Sarah believed broken things could be made beautiful," Ethan said. "She believed the cracks are where the light gets in. You, me, Ranger, Lucas, Tommy, we're all cracked. But we're letting the light through. And that light is helping others find their way." As darkness fell and the children came inside, Ranger settled beside Ethan's wheelchair. The dog's amber eyes reflected the porch light, calm and content. The nightmares were gone. The frantic searching had ended. He'd found peace not by forgetting Sarah, but by continuing her work. "Not all heroes wear badges, do they, boy?" Ethan whispered, stroking Ranger's head. "Some give them away." 1 year after Sarah's death, Ethan stood before her memorial at the police department. The bronze plaque gleamed in the afternoon light, her face immortalized in metal, her badge number engraved beneath. Around him gathered everyone whose lives she'd touched: Tommy and his grandparents, Michael and Lucas, Frank, Maggie, Dr. Cooper, and dozens of Second Chances participants with their rescue dogs. Ranger sat beside Ethan's wheelchair, his posture dignified despite his injury. The dog wore a special vest Maggie had made, blue with gold letters reading "Ambassador of Hope." "A year ago today," Ethan began, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, "I lost my best friend, my partner, the finest officer I've ever known. Sarah Mitchell died pursuing justice, protecting the innocent, standing up to corruption. But her death wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something greater." He gestured to the crowd. "Look around. Every person here, every dog, represents a life Sarah continues to save. She's saving them through us, through the choices we make to honor her memory. Michael was a desperate father who made terrible decisions, but Sarah saw beyond his crime to his humanity. She saved his son with her own money, asking nothing in return. That's not just justice, that's grace." Michael stepped forward, Lucas holding his hand. "Sarah gave me back my son and my freedom. She believed in redemption when everyone else saw only a criminal. That belief changed everything. Now I work with second chances, helping others who've lost their way find a path back. Every person I help is a tribute to her. Tommy walked to the memorial, placing a single white rose at its base. His voice was steady now, stronger than it had been. My mom always said, "Be kind, especially to those who can't repay you." She lived that every day. She helped people who couldn't help her back. She loved people who couldn't love her back. And she saved people who didn't even know they needed saving. The boy turned to the crowd. I used to be angry that she was gone, angry that she chose her job over coming home to me, but I understand now. She didn't choose her job over me. She chose to make the world better for me, for all of us. That's what heroes do. Linda wiped tears from her eyes, Robert's arm around her shoulders. Their grandson had not only found his voice, he'd found his purpose, just as Sarah would have wanted. Ethan continued, his words deliberate and heavy with meaning. The Second Chances program has matched 147 pairs in the past year, 147 people who thought they were beyond help, beyond hope, beyond love, 147 dogs who'd been abandoned, traumatized, written off as too damaged to save. But here's what Sarah understood that took me months to learn. Nobody is too broken to heal. Nothing is too damaged to save. Not if someone is willing to see past the wounds to the worth beneath. He looked down at Ranger. This dog was considered dangerous, aggressive, beyond redemption. But he wasn't broken. He was grieving. He wasn't violent. He was protecting himself from more pain. All he needed was someone who understood. Someone who'd felt the same grief, carried the same guilt, survived the same trauma. Marcus Webb wheeled forward, Duke walking calmly beside him. A year ago I was planning my own death. I'd lost everything. My legs, my career, my dog, my wife. I thought I had nothing left to offer the world. Then Ethan and Ranger showed me I was wrong. They showed me that my pain had purpose, that my survival wasn't random. It was for something. Now I help other veterans find that same purpose. We're not victims of our trauma. We're proof that trauma can be transformed into triumph. Another participant stood, a woman named Catherine who'd lost her teenage daughter to a drunk driver. Beside her sat an elderly golden retriever named Molly, rescued from a hoarding situation. My daughter loved animals. She volunteered at shelters. When she died, I couldn't look at dogs without breaking down. But Second Chances paired me with Molly, who'd spent 5 years locked in a cage, neglected, starving. We were both prisoners of our past, but together we found a way out. Every day I care for Molly, I honor my daughter. Every day, Molly trusts me a little more. We both heal a little more. The stories continued. A firefighter with PTSD paired with a dog rescued from a fire. A widow whose husband died of cancer matched with a dog whose owner had passed away. A child who'd witnessed violence learning to smile again through a gentle rescue dog. Each story was a testament to Sarah's core belief that love, patience, and second chances could redeem anyone, anything. Frank stepped forward to speak. Sarah Mitchell was my colleague for 8 years. I watched her work cases, interview suspects, pursue justice. But what I remember most isn't her professional skill. It's the moment she'd spend her lunch break sitting with a scared witness. The times she'd use her own money to buy food for a homeless person she'd just cited. The way she'd talk to criminals not as enemies, but as people who'd lost their way. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. She had this saying, "Everyone's carrying something heavy. Our job isn't just to enforce the law, it's to help people carry their burdens until they're strong enough to carry them alone." That's what Second Chances does. We sit with people in their pain until they're strong enough to stand again. Maggie moved to the microphone, her silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. Sarah came to me when she was 6 years old, a broken little girl who'd lost everything. I gave her a home, but she gave me so much more. She showed me that love isn't about biology, it's about choice. You choose to love. You choose to stay. You choose to believe in someone even when they can't believe in themselves. She looked at Ethan and Ranger. When Sarah died, I knew what she'd want. She'd want her death to mean something, to create something beautiful from something terrible. That's why I called Ethan. That's why I knew Ranger belonged with him. Because Sarah understood that sometimes the broken pieces of two souls can create something stronger than either was alone. The crowd fell silent as Ethan wheeled closer to the memorial. He placed his hand on the bronze plaque, feeling the cool metal beneath his palm. Sarah, if you can hear me, I need you to know something. You didn't die in vain. Every life saved through second chances is your life continuing. Every person who chooses compassion over judgment is choosing to see the world through your eyes. Every dog that finds a home, every person who finds hope, that's you, still working, still serving, still saving people. His voice broke. I miss you every day. But I'm not drowning in that loss anymore. I'm swimming through it toward something you'd be proud of. Toward a world where everyone gets the second chance you gave to all of us. Tommy walked over and took Ethan's hand. Lucas joined them, then Michael. One by one, everyone in the crowd moved forward, forming a circle around the memorial. Humans and dogs together, connected by grief transformed into purpose, loss transformed into love. Ranger stood, limped to the memorial, and did something he hadn't done since Sarah's funeral. He howled, not in anguish this time, but in tribute. A long, clear sound that echoed across the grounds. It was a goodbye, an acknowledgement, a promise to carry her memory forward. Other dogs joined him, their voices rising together in a chorus that seemed to bridge heaven and earth. The humans stood silent, tears streaming, as the dogs sang their farewell to the woman who'd believed in second chances. When the howling faded, Ethan spoke one last time. Sarah left us with a mission. Be kind, especially to those who can't repay you. Choose compassion over judgment. See worth where others see worthlessness. Give second chances freely, because we've all needed them ourselves. He looked at the assembled crowd, broken people and broken animals, all of them rebuilding, all of them proof that redemption was real. Let's go out there and live her legacy. Every kindness is her kindness. Every life saved is her life continuing. Every second chance given is her gift to the world. As the ceremony ended and people began to disperse, Tommy remained with Ethan and Ranger. The boy was quiet for a long moment, then said, Uncle Ethan, when I grow up, I want to be a police officer like Mom. Ethan smiled through his tears. Your mother would love that. But I want to do it her way, not just catching bad guys, but helping people, seeing them the way she saw them, as people who need help, not just people who broke rules. That's exactly what she'd want, Tommy. That's her truest legacy. Lucas approached shyly. My dad says I can volunteer at Second Chances when I'm older. Help match dogs with people. Is that okay? Your mother... Ethan caught himself. Sarah, she'd be honored. You're living because of her. Now you'll help others live because of what she taught us. The two boys stood before Sarah's memorial, and Ethan saw the future in their young faces. A future where kindness wasn't weakness, where second chances weren't naive, where seeing the humanity in everyone wasn't foolish. It was the highest calling. That evening, back at the cabin, Ethan sat with Ranger on the porch. The sun was setting over Montana's mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, the color of Ranger's eyes, the color of hope. We did it, boy, Ethan whispered. We survived. More than that, we thrived. We turned our pain into something that helps others. Sarah would be proud. Ranger's tail wagged slowly, contentedly. His body was scarred, his gait uneven, but his spirit was whole. He'd found peace not by forgetting Sarah, but by living the principles she'd taught him. Loyalty, courage, unconditional love. Ethan pulled out his guitar and began to play. The melody drifted on the evening breeze, carrying with it all the grief and joy, the loss and hope, the pain and healing of the past year. Ranger closed his eyes, his breathing deep and even, and in that moment, Ethan understood the final lesson. Sarah's death had broken them, yes, but in their brokenness, they'd discovered something profound, that the cracks are where the light gets in. And that light, once inside, illuminates everything. It shows you that survival isn't enough, that healing is possible, that love doesn't die. It transforms, continues, multiplies through every life it touches. "Thank you, Sarah," Ethan said to the sunset, "for everything. For Ranger, for second chances, for teaching us that the measure of a life isn't how long it lasts, but how many other lives it changes." Ranger opened one eye, looked at Ethan, then at the sunset. Then he did something remarkable. He smiled. That unique expression dogs make when they're truly, completely happy. And Ethan smiled back, realizing that happiness hadn't died with Sarah. It had just been waiting for them to be ready to feel it again. As darkness fell, they went inside together, a detective who couldn't walk and a dog who'd never stopped protecting him. Two broken souls who'd found their way through the valley of shadow, not by forgetting their loss, but by honoring it, by turning grief into grace. Now, by giving to others what Sarah had given to them, a second chance at life, at love, at everything that makes survival worth the struggle. Dear friend, if you've lived 6 decades or more, you understand loss. You've buried people you loved. You've survived things that should have broken you. You've carried grief so heavy you wondered if you'd ever put it down. But here's what Ethan and Ranger's story teaches us. Your pain has purpose. Your survival matters. The losses you've endured haven't destroyed you. They've prepared you to help others survive their own darkness. Maybe you've lost a spouse, a friend, a dream you thought would last forever. That loss doesn't define you. What you do with it does. Sarah saved a child while everyone else saw only a criminal. She chose compassion when others chose judgment. She gave second chances freely because she understood we all need them. You have that same power. Your kindness matters. Your experience matters. The wisdom earned through your suffering can light someone else's path. Not all heroes wear capes. Some have weathered faces, arthritic hands, and hearts that keep loving despite being broken. That's you. That's your legacy, waiting to be written. What second chance will you give today? Who will you see not as they are, but as they could be with someone believing in them? Have you ever been given a second chance that changed your life? Or have you given someone else a second chance? How did it transform both of you? Leave a comment below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.